Welcome to the Fitness Fest podcast. My name is Tyler Valencia and I'm the president of KIPS and Time to Train Fitness. Today we have a great one for our audience. We have one of the pioneers in the industry. We have Leslee Bender on the podcast. First of all, Leslee, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, this is going to be a great episode. I just imagine this one blowing up for our audience and just tuning in, hearing your story, all that great stuff. So we're going to kick it off with our first question that we start off on the podcast. And then that's what's your story in the fitness industry? Can you give us a little background on Leslee before the Bender Ball and I Am Ageless Now?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm going to back up to I'm going to say probably in my 20s is I essentially attended an aerobics class here in Reno, Nevada. I'm actually back here in Reno right now. That was an aerobic workshop was the name of this club. And there was heart-pounding music, everyone in inappropriate G-strings and leg warmers. I'm really aging myself now. And to be honest with you, I walked in and I took a class and I thought to myself, this is it. This is what I want to do, even though while I was attending college, my major was managerial sciences and business. And so I added on a minor in health ecology. So I think I always knew in my heart of hearts that I loved being active and physically able to do things that, that was fun and that was group oriented. And I guess for me, I've always been somewhat of an extrovert as far as being in front of people. And so when they approached me and said, hey, you ought to learn how to teach. And of course, that was back before there was a thing called a certification and or safety. So with that being said, here I am, 3 weeks later, I'm now an instructor at this particular studio. And so progressing on, I guess, a few more years is then all of a sudden the aerobics industry was a boom. And those of us that are the baby boomer population, we really started the aerobic industry when you think about it. And I'm not sure what idea is celebrating this year. I want to say it's their 38th or 40th year, something like that. I think it's 38 that they'll in 2022 that, they will be celebrating how long we've been in this industry. And so, with that being said, these big conferences started happening. And in the beginning, I was an attendee and I thought to myself, I want to be up on that stage someday. This is my goal. This is my dream. And then I actually moved to Germany, and that's where my career launched, because the Europeans were really seeking after American talent as far as leading, in fitness conventions. And I know that one of the conventions in one of my sessions, because it was a high intensity aerobic class and I got brought on by Nike, I kid you not, there was probably 2,000 people in that class. I felt like a rock star. And so I moved back to the USA, lived in Southern Cal for a while, and then wound up moving back here to Reno and became a director of a club of which I'm redoing here in Reno now. And so with that being said, I, got into this thing called Pilates back in the year 2000, and I started utilizing a small ball, and I was the very first to do that in the Pilates industry. And nobody was using really small equipment in the Pilates world except maybe, the Magic Circle and things of this nature. So my first conference was the Body, Mind, Spirit conference, to which I used a small ball. And the sales were insane. I think I sold over 2,000 balls within 2 hours because nobody had anything like that. And so to fast forward now to about 2005, I was at the IDEA conference where I had my booth of Pilates coach, and that's where I met the owner of Xavier Fitness. And he said, "What are you doing with that small ball?" And I explained to him, I said, "Well, I use this for core training. I prefer putting this behind my low back because even intuitively back then, I felt all the flexion that was being done in Pilates movements was really contraindicated to the neck and the low back. And so with that being said, he said, have you ever thought of doing an infomercial? And so he flew me down to Southern Cal a couple weeks later, and in 2006 or so, they launched the Bender Ball infomercial, and it was the highest selling infomercial, one of the biggest ones in history, because our price point was $9.99. So that really, gave me the exposure to doing the things that I've done and helping me along, especially personally and in my business. But I think truly what has inspired me more than anything is just the biomechanics of education. And this is where I chose in 2010 to go through the Gray Institute of Applied Functional Science. So I'm a gift graduate. I did the year-long training. I've also studied under Thomas Myers, and actually it was in Phoenix, the Discovery Lab, where we spent a week working on cadavers. So wow. For me, I feel like we need to, as trainers, understand the complexity of the human body much greater than what we do now, because the active aging population has limitations, has injuries, has surgeries, and I feel like we're really lacking education in this business now. Personally, I think that there's too many influencers on social media that are doing hardcore exercises without any knowledge of why they're doing what they're doing. Matter of fact, I see it all the time on posts, and I want to pull my hair out because there is no regulations in our industry of being educated, unfortunately.
Agree.
So that's I just fast forwarded myself to where I am now.
A lot to unpack there. I will comment on the educational piece because being someone that has pursued a lot of education in my career while being in the fitness industry, but also making education, and along the same lines of seeing what's out there on social media, and even what's, I'll say, discussed by top educators. Sometimes you scratch your head with it, or sometimes you wonder where the advancements are. And that's part of the issues I have with, I'll say the big word is accreditation, but to tackle the social media part of it, I mean, it's almost a copy and paste sometimes, or even it's more about the looks of things. Who can do the most extravagant thing? Who can do the most of X, Y, Z? And a discussion that we jumped into on a previous episode with Dr. Dan Ritchie of FAI. We were talking about this with certifications in general, with some of them lacking the application part, or mostly being about how to benefit more oneself in their own type of training instead of what can benefit your clients. And oftentimes I think trainers do go that route to, I'm really into XYZ, instead of what are your clients really into? What is going to benefit them the most? And I will say might be great now. How do you usually describe Pilates to a new person? What is that? What is the XYZ points that you're kind of hitting every time that you're trying to tell them, here's why you should take Pilates?
Well, I'll backtrack a little bit. And first of all, I'm not a fan of a one-day Pilates certification. And they're out there. And there is definitely a lack of safety and it's very antiquated training. Imprinting the spine, tucking the pelvis is restricting the natural motion of the lumbar, thoracic, and cervical spine, which we are designed to do as a human being. But Joseph Pilates, if we go back to his era, computers didn't exist, cell phones didn't exist, and we didn't have the obesity and people driving everywhere like we do these days. His clientele were dancers and very, very athletic individuals that studied and trained under him, as was Lottie Burke, who really was the founder of the Lottie Burke method of bar training. So I believe in a lot of bar modalities and Pilates modalities. It's incredibly antiquated and biomechanically unsafe for 90% of the population because of the body positions, especially in bar, of being in excessive plantar flexion, shoving the knees over the feet. We don't walk that way. It's the patellofemoral joint. You are putting massive amount of shearing force on the knee. And I feel like, again, we're lacking education in two of these modalities. Now, if you look at Polestar Pilates or some of these other companies that require 600-hour training, that they really enforce you to understand the why behind you're doing what you're doing, then anyone who, is coming into an experience of Pilates class, for example, would be under the guidance of an instructor that would say, this is how I recommend that you do this exercise. And honestly, I think at the end of the day, that comes with experience. And I think that I personally feel that any kind of training should require a minimum of like 200-hour training, or like if you're doing a specialty certificate, like a bar training, I think having a prerequisite of some kind of national certification at a minimum is really a good thing to have. And I know that, I mean, it's kind of with bar and with Pilates, I think there's a lot of women that, maybe we're stay-at-home moms, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm gonna become a Pilates instructor, and yet they've never taught, and they've never had any guidance of understanding why they're doing what they're doing. So I just feel like if this is your passion and this is really something that you want to do, like you said, prior to, for example, if I see a trainer that is facing their back to the class and they're working out and they are not facing the class and watching the alignment of their students, then they've done it as more self-fulfilling than they are really doing it to improve the health of others. So when I hear trainers say, yeah, I got certified so I can get paid to work out, I want to pull my hair out. And I hear that all the time, and I I'll be honest, I don't have a filter. I really believe that, that we need to crack down on educations, on truly giving new trainers these guidelines of how you work with each individual body, because we all move so differently. And I think Pilates is so beneficial, especially equipment-based, when the trainer actually knows what they're doing. But when I hear, because I work for a Pilates chain. And when students come in and say, I took so-and-so's class and I wrenched my shoulder or my neck, that's not what I want to hear. But I guess in defense of the trainer, it's because they haven't learned. They don't know. And I think our industry needs to become sterner in the way that we allow people to graduate and become a movement specialist. Does that make sense?
100%. It's so, I'll say it's always very nice to hear those things from a fellow educator. And having worked on the education side for close to 10 years and having done accreditation applications, studied other organizations' education, and taken other certifications, it's always, I'll say, very interesting when we discuss the education for an entry-level personal trainer. And I know that individuals from other countries, when we discuss, here's what you have to do in the States, they're like, wait, you don't do any hands-on? You're not having to prove that you can apply this education?
Yeah, they laugh at us.
Yeah, they do. And I remember when I took, and this was so minimal, but when I first took my AFA personal training certification, when I first entered the industry, there was a component where you had to demonstrate teaching cueing and exercise. And it was very minimal, but at least they had something that proved that you could cue somebody through an exercise. And also they would always throw that wrench in there that, okay, well, what if this client had XYZ? How do you modify or progress this exercise for them? minimums. And there are, with our industry, with it being so, okay, what's the quickest way we can get people certified? What's the minimum that they can do? And it's such a long discussion that I know that you and I would share common values on, but it's one of those things that at the end of the day, it will make trainers better and people across the whole country healthier. If they move better, if they can continue to exercise, isn't that what we want? Instead of I'm going to pound you into the ground, and that's why you like my class. I'm one of those people that, wouldn't you rather be able to come back to the next class than walk away feeling like, oh, I'm going to be sore for a week? I'd rather you come back in 2 days for the next class than not come back at all. And I'm right there with you with teaching classes and taking the classes with them. When I used to teach a live boot camp, I was running around like crazy the whole time, helping people with their technique, trying to give them different modifications, because I'm, I guess, an instructor and a group instructor that is very technical. I prefer to modify exercise instead of getting general prescriptions. And so it's one of those things where we talk about education, we talk about the industry and the qualifications of people entering. It's such a tough one to unpack, because I will say that I see both sides of it. I see the business side of it. I have to say that because I do own an education company, but coming from the other side of it, I see why having stricter entry to the industry can benefit. And I think the question to you now, having been in the industry when education was just getting rolling, people were just getting certified, probably you saw a lot of these companies get rolling. What do you think the impact of accreditation has on the industry?
Well, that's a great question, because I was just processing what you were saying. And for example, myself and I can, at least 10 other presenters that are my age category in our 60s that, again, we started the industry, have had either hip or knee replacements. So it for me, it's like when I talk about, alignment and why I'm passionate about it, it's like I talk to these young presenters, like we have some presenters on, the Xavier team that are in their 30s. And it's like, the reason I'm telling you that this is why you shouldn't be doing this is I hope you've got $100,000 stacked away, because that's what a knee replacement costs. And I know back then when I was in my 30s, I didn't know anything about safety. I didn't know anything about, biomechanics, because it didn't exist. There wasn't the crossover and the bridging the gap between physical therapy and fitness like there is now. Foam rolling didn't exist. Yoga wasn't part of the thing, and or Pilates. And so, but yet now we have all this knowledge, and this is what drives me crazy. We have all these organizations, the Gray Institute, NASM, ACSM, and we've got these organizations and speakers like yourself with their degrees in this field. And it's like these young trainers would much rather learn choreography than learn biomechanics. And it's frustrating because it's here for us. I mean, heck, you can go onto YouTube and learn about your fascia without ever having to take a cadaver lab, and it's there, but it's like that they want that. It's like you said, it's more the show. It's more of, oh, look at how great I look in a bikini. I mean, if I see one more post of a presenter putting, half naked of themselves on social media, I want to pull my hair out again, because it's like, we're not talking health, we're talking aesthetics. And I think at the end of the day, yes, people want to look good in their clothes, or feel good in their clothes, I should say. But, if you're walking around and, you're living on Tylenol or Advil every day, is it worth it? And so that gets down to our education system. And I'm sure you remember at one point in time, IRSA was trying to go down the path of licensure, but because it's different from state to state, I think some gyms don't even require certification anymore. Oh, you have a CPR? Fine, we'll hire you. And matter of fact, I know that a candidate sent in their application to where I am here in Reno yesterday, and she goes, I'm a fitness model. I don't really care. What's your education? Oh, I do fitness modeling, and it's like, sorry, you're doing something for yourself. You're not, how are you going to help somebody else and understand how to help somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
What worked for you is not going to necessarily work for someone else. So again, that's our conundrum, don't you think, in this industry?
Yeah, it's very much. People have these accolades that don't apply to helping others. And the education piece, it's such a tough one. I remember having read research on state to state and how there are different regulations, different states trying to push through different bills to get licensure. And one of the pieces that always comes back to when I've spoken with different directors of education for different gyms and somebody that I've had deep discussions about it, he would always talk about the liability of it. A certification, at the end of the day, does it give an instructor the basic information to say that they can be a certified trainer? And that's very, very basic, I'll say, in terms of his approach to it. But there are gyms out there that they don't care about accreditation. They don't care about those things. And I think we do have to sometimes look at their end of it too. They do want to get them in, but also put them through their programs. I think that that's a good approach to it. And to steer this conversation here with it is that getting them certified, in my opinion, and I've shared this on occasionally, I don't chime in many times on Facebook groups just because I feel like it's the same conversation over and over. And you can oftentimes just search in a group and find answers. But when I do chime in, and somebody's asking about what's the best personal training certification, should I spend X amount of dollars on X certification? I will say that you should just get the cheapest one, because you should get in the industry, because technically, and some people don't agree with me when I say this, but I will say that I've done the accreditation applications for 2 different organizations. I know what goes into them, what you have to submit, the steps of creating the different boards, the steps of getting the questions together. And I will say that they are all technically designed to be the same. And one of the flaws of it is that essentially the exams, somebody should be able to technically do the education from one company and then take the exam for another, because at the end of the day, it's entry level guidelines for someone to enter the industry. But getting into the industry and then going through some type of educational program is going to help you out. And the example that you might be familiar with too is what Equinox does, in gyms that do have their educational programs or in schools where they teach them to be trainers, is a resource that whenever I speak with somebody and I always bring up the example of Equinox and their school system and how they teach trainers, is that somebody coming out of the training from Equinox is well set up to succeed in the industry and will most likely be in the industry longer than an individual that just gets certified and tries to do it on their own. So gyms that do have this school and do invest in the educational piece, that might be a good piece to look at for somebody. What do you think about all that?
I love the idea, and it's interesting that the owner of this facility here in Reno, we were just discussing that she was saying how they don't have a educational program in their club. Mm-hmm. And I can see that by the way they're a couple of the way the trainers train. And again, they're young trainers and they're doing stuff with people that is cringing for me to see. And with that being said, it is, again, to go through, like you said, a base level program, or even something that is basically gives you the certificate, but then you have to put in the hours, the observation hours, the assistant hours of training. And I think that is so crucial for anyone, like a Pilates instructor, yoga, or personal trainer should have a mentor. And if you've got a mentor where you can this is what I truly loved about the Gray Institute is the fact that, we had to go through the live events. We had to film ourselves because it was arduous. I mean, it was, it took it. Oh, I don't know. It was a good 10-hour-a-week program that you had to dedicate yourself to. And I jumped in with both feet. I really did. And I've never done, I think, harder than a lot of the PT classes I took up in school. But with that being said, I felt like it forced me to understand movement as it relates to the planes of motion, as it relates to gravity and ground reaction, and all these things that I think Gary was so brilliant at teaching that the only way to learn it was through experience.
Yeah.
And working with clients and saying, yeah, reach this way. Where do you feel that? Great. We just affected your XYZ. And I would love to see that happen in facilities where there was a mentoring program. Like you said, Equinox. I think Lifetime might do it as well. I'm not sure, but gosh, I mean, it really, that way, you've got your master trainers that really know their stuff, and then you put new trainers under, and then they have a chance to walk out of something and say, I get it. You know what I mean? It's like physical therapy. You have to be a PT aide before, when you get out of school, they don't just throw you in as a PT. You got to work your way up on the ranks, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think it helps solve the issue with people leaving the industry so quickly, with not being able to make a career out of it. It's oftentimes is that they don't have the tools to succeed. They have an entry-level certification, but there's so many more tools that go along with it. And a question to come back to with mentorship. I want to get back to talking about you and your background. Along your career, did you have any mentors that helped you along the path?
I did. When I first got into, I would say, aerobics, I worked with a guy in Germany that was like an amazing choreographer, an amazing instructor. And I mean, he really taught me how to teach an aerobics class. And that was, I would say, my first experience is having that individual as a mentor. And then I've had, different Pilates mentors, like from Brent Anderson, who I think was a PT, to, I can't remember, he's got a couple of other trainers on his staff that I worked under when I went through Polestar training that I thought were absolutely fantastic. And then as far as working with functional training and biomechanics, again, I'll go back to Gary and Doug Gray, Chuck Wolf, because he's in Florida, and I've done some work with Chuck, and I just think he's amazing. And these are some of the people that I've worked with that, I mean, I really look up to, because I look at somebody and their credentials, not, I mean, where I'm in my career right now, I'm looking for somebody that's like, have you put in the sweat equity? And this is what I think is so crucial now for a lot of these, these organizations that are putting on conferences is the people that they are bringing in. What is their background? You know what I mean? And are they going to be good mentors for all these new trainers that are coming in either virtually and or in a live setting, if that makes sense, is so that we can inspire them, and help them to make the decision of what career path they want to take. And I feel like, Dan Ritchie or Evan Ozar, these are two people that I most definitely feel are doing that.
Yeah. Those are two great examples. And there's a reason why they're on the circuit, and you see them at a lot of the conferences, is their educational background, their approach to education, and then their passion about it. When you see them speak, whether it's on a podcast, they've both been on the Fitness Fest podcast, but when you see them lecture, they're just so passionate about it. And it does inspire the learner on the other side of it.
And I think, I guess, just to add to that, a bit of frustration in our industry, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
And I think you would agree with me on that. I mean, do you play in the sandbox? And if you don't, then you're not part of that tribe. And I think that's unfortunate because, I'm an educator. It's not about the social circuit that I'm in. It's about how can I help new trainers achieve their goals. But I find I see it more and more now. It's like it's not based on your education, it's based on your popularity. And I don't know if you have experienced that as well.
Oh yeah, I have. Even though you've been in the industry a lot longer than mine, I can share some of that resentment, and a part of it, and you might agree with this, has to go back to my morals. I do not sometimes play the game, as they call it.
Yeah.
I am very fortunate that I have spoken at a good amount of conferences for how long I've been in the industry. And I took time off from speaking on circuits just because I felt like I wanted to have more experience in my own realm and be able to share at a higher level. But it is very much of a kind of playing field and playing the game with it. I don't enjoy that process, and it's something that I'm not going to put them out there, but I spoke with one of our past guests on the podcast, and to hear this individual share their views on it, but also help. I think there are lots of people like yourself that do share that view, but also do want to help the next generation too, to provide the advice for those individuals that do eventually want to speak or get on the speaking circuit or make an impact on the industry. That it's not just about their followers, but how do they make a good presentation when they do go to these, or when they are on the circuit. And that's something that, there really isn't a template or I'll say a process for putting together lectures. I think sometimes if you're an educator, you just know how to put together an hour and a half, hour 45 lecture. But I have had to myself help some presenters with putting together their lecture because they don't come from that arena. And it's something that maybe there should be some information out there. Here's how do you have any type of learning objectives? Do you have a structure for your presentation? But I know I'm just going down a little vent here with that, but going back to Leslee and also the Bender ball, I kind of want to dive back into that because very few, such a small percentage of people have their own equipment or something that's named after them. What was that process of getting something that you're going to put your name on, a piece of equipment that's going to be sold? What was that like?
Well, first of all, I wish I was the owner of the Bender ball. I'd probably be living in Tahiti right now, but I've never been in this for the money. I first want to throw that out there, but I just happened to sort of be at the right place at the right time because the owner of Xavier was trying to decide, kind of what to, name this ball program, this core ball training program. Mm-hmm. And the designer he was working with said, call it the Bender ball. Mm. And so, that just because it's my last name, it worked. And it's, it is pretty incredible when I'm sitting here talking to you, thinking about the fact that my last name is a piece of equipment as well. And so for me, it definitely has given me, notoriety of how a small ball can be used so easily, whether it's a home workout or whether there's a bag of them in a fitness facility. They serve such a good purpose for so many different, modifications or variations. And, there's tons of balls out there, but no one else has their name on it. So I feel very honored that, And it, it actually was on my bucket list as I was getting into this industry. I thought to myself, someday I'm going to be on TV, and lo and behold, I did. So, I guess for me, Tyler, I think all the way from, being nominated 2020 Idea Personal Trainer of the Year, and I'm passing the torch next weekend. I feel like so much of what I've wanted to accomplish in my life, from authoring a book to having a piece of equipment, when I sit and talk to you, it reminds me how grateful I am that everything that I've set out to do so far has actually come into fruition. And it's truly from hard work and dedication, and not because, I came from money or anything like that, which I didn't. And, I have worked since I was 10 years old, and I've been homeless, living on the streets basically to where I am now. It's been quite a journey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I appreciate you sharing those items. And, it's something that you see the hard work. You see your name in so many places. And I know that I think I started the podcast saying this, but I said it before we started recording, was how much of a pleasure this episode is going to be, because I want to know about your background, and because I've seen it in so many places at conferences that I've spoken at, and it's great to see and hear the background, the story behind it, because some people do get lucky. They get lucky where they just automatically get put on a circuit, or they get a course, or things along that nature. But the hard work is something that you can hang your hat on, and things come around. They always do. And with now looking at I Am Ageless Now, can you give the audience a little bit of background on what I Am Ageless Now is, and a little bit of background on the item that you sell on the website?
Yeah. Well, we created an online course that actually Functional Aging Institute picked up, and so did Idea. We have a membership where every week you get a workout with me. We also have our book that we published. And now that I'm switching gears and kind of stepping again away from being so much on the circuit, I think COVID, and doing everything virtually was such a change for all of us that we had to shift. And for me, the shift was finishing the book with my business partner. And I think for me, moving forward is living agelessly, and how it works from a nutritional aspect, because we share that, from a way of living, from doing something as simple as, like, for example, I've never paddleboarded before, and I went out and I paddleboarded last weekend, and I'm hooked. I want to go get one now because it was so zen and it was so peaceful. And yet, my whole body felt, the reflexes that are necessary not to fall off the paddleboard, and what an amazing core training that was. And I thought to myself, we get very stuck. So many people feel like, I'm too old, I can't do this anymore. And I just want to reach out to the audience who will be listening to this. It's such a mindset for somebody who had their knee cut in half a year and a half ago, that I wasn't sure if I was going to walk again, much less be on snow skis or a water ski in 3 months. But my mindset was, I will survive. I will survive the depression. I will survive the anxiety of, will I be able to do these things again? And I just want those listening to know that we have the ability as fitness professionals to lift people up greater than maybe their doctor, greater than maybe their therapist, and share with them our stories of, being kicked down and crawling ourselves back up, and it can be done. And so ageless is such a state of mind, and, and every single day in our life is a gift. And looking at the future and not looking at the past is huge, because we have a tendency to dwell on the past, and you can't move into the future if you dwell on the past. And, you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable, if that makes sense. And so my new journey moving forward is a whole rehabilitation program and rejuvenation program, working with foam rolling, meditation, essential oils, and how you can get rid of pain in your body in a matter of 30 minutes. And it's not that hard to do. So it's kind of my next project of what I'm working on. So, I keep working on things that I just know that are so beneficial for people. So, I mean, that's the I am ageless now philosophy. So, I would love people to go through the program. And we did a live training with the Canadians a couple weeks ago, and I think we had 30 people on it. And, we'd love to do more of them. And so I'll be setting up. I really personally want to do more live trainings now that things are opening up, because I think it is something that people need to experience, not only virtually, but live. So stay tuned. I'm going to be setting up trainings here.
I dig it. Let's quickly jump back to this last year with things shutting down, conferences still going on. Did you find yourself busier or still going on the virtual conference circuit and doing a lot of virtual trainings?
Oh my God. I think, the first couple of weeks, when we got shut down, everyone went into panic mode, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And after that, to be honest with you, I shifted. And I thought, I'm going to learn this Zoom thing. I'm going to learn how to do this. Now, I don't have a fancy background. I don't have a big fancy room that I do this in. I do this in a corner of my home, which the lighting and everything is good. So honestly, I reinvented myself very quickly and started doing Zoom trainings and, shifted the CECs into virtual versus live. And I got to say, for the first, 6 months, I was crazy busy, but then everybody else jumped on it. So there's lots of virtual trainings now. There's lots of workouts online, and a lot of people have shifted to that. So the competition now is stiff, as you know. Yep. So I'll be honest with you, I've kind of backed off because for me, I hit burnout. Because there's as much preparation that goes into a virtual training, if not more. You got to make sure that everything is good, as with your lighting, your camera, your sound, and everything else. And oh my God, the internet goes down, and then you're sitting there going, "Oh shit, I just lost 100 people. Now what?" So I found it to be more stressful than live. So I am so excited to come to Fitness Fest. I can't even tell you, because I don't even care if I have 2 people in my session. It's 2 people that are live bodies.
I will say, not that I don't, even though I do help out with Fitness Fest and here and there, I do not know your numbers, but I can almost guarantee that you have more than 2 people. I just know.
Awesome.
That
3 will be great. I'm good with that.
Leslie, you're a big get. You're a big get for Fitness Fest. With virtual trainings, though, I got to say that you hit it right on the nose with that. There's just as much preparation. That's the part that some people sometimes miss out on. That they just think, oh, I'm going to show up on time or at the time of the class, and I'm just going to go. But I always tell them, you got to treat it just like your live classes. Yep. That when you were doing live trainings, you would show up 10, 15 minutes early, get your music set, make sure your lights are set, there's no trash or the equipment's left out, or you're getting your equipment out, all your preparation. The same thing applies with virtual trainings. It's a different mindset. I'm checking my lights, I'm checking my internet speed, I'm checking my microphones, those types of items. So slight difference, but same mindset with it. So it's good to hear that you do those things. That's the sign of a pro. You're a pro. And so I wouldn't expect anything less from it. And
well, I have my moments, as we all did. So, but again, you reinvent yourself, you shift. And it's like the book, Shift Happens, and it's all the way in which you handle it, and I just think that now that things honestly are opening it up, Tyler, I think that we're going to, slowly but surely, everyone's going to start coming back into the gyms, and we need welcome arms. And I feel like, if I can give advice out to any personal trainers that are listening to this, handle them with gentle gloves.
Mhm.
Don't weigh them. Don't measure them. Most people know that they ate their way through COVID. They know they've gained weight, and to put them on the treadmill and say, "Come on, you need to start killing yourself and making up for all this time you didn't work out." We're reinforcing negative behavior versus embracing the fact that they actually they had the confidence to come back.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, we have to embrace that, because at the end of the day, listen, we're fitness people. We're addicted to this. It's in our DNA. I mean, we probably were out walking our dog before they even shut us down. Let's put it that way. And, because that's our deal. And with that being said, I just feel like, positive reinforcement to people who are just now coming back, I think, is one of the biggest, what I would say is a takeaway from this, is really, handling people gently and saying, I'm glad you're back in, and, we're going to go on this journey together. And I think that with that being said, we are going to see an influx in people coming back into fitness like we've never seen before, but we have to do it the right way.
Yeah. I honestly got to say that I wish I saw more education, more trainings on just that, on that alone. You hear people talking about, people are going to come back, people are going to come back. Here's this stat, here's that stat. Well, what about how do we handle the mindset of people coming back? It was already hard for them in the first place. So how do we handle it now? And I wish there was more information out there about that. I will put that in there. But with now in the podcast, I got to ask you a couple questions that everybody gets asked. And it's all advice part. That's what I like about this podcast, is it's advice from pros that have been in the industry and them giving back. And so it's always a nice part of the podcast, because I know that you're going to have some good tips here. So the first one here, if you were entering the industry now, what was something that you wish you knew?
If I were just coming into the industry and wish I knew, for example, rephrase the question. So, in other words, something that I should know coming into the industry.
What was something you wish you knew, like that education wise or training wise? What was something that you wish you knew that would have helped you get started a little bit quicker?
Oh, okay. I believe I wished I knew a more seasoned professional that I could work under. That somebody that I could approach if I were new coming into this industry, to seek out someone with high knowledge that would guide me in and help to mold me into the profession that I'm choosing to be in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good one. It is a good one. That's good. Next one. What advice do you have for fitness professionals looking to get started on the speaking circuit?
Well, get yourself a good speaking coach. Toastmasters, practice in front of a camera. I was very lucky that when I went on live TV, I had Oprah Winfrey's coach who, yeah, I know, right? But it was stressful. I had the opportunity of working under this individual who would play you speaking to a mock audience, and then you'd be played back. So the fluctuation of your voice, your eye contact, your approachability is crucial. And I think that one of the things that we have the opportunity that we didn't have in 2006 is we have incredible cameras on our smart devices, right? And I cannot stress enough, especially if you are teaching a movement class, mirror, mirror, mirror. Do not turn your back to the camera ever. Nobody wants to see your back end, right? Everybody wants to see your face, your fluctuation of, your mouth, your eyes, your expressions all need to be seen by your participant. They don't want to be looking at your butt. And it's one of my pet peeves that I see, even seasoned trainers, when they're doing workouts, is they're facing their back to the camera. And it's not our workout. So your left is your student's right. So if you are teaching a movement class, learn to mirror. So to get on the circuit, if you're going to become a mover, then learn to mirror. If you're going to get on the circuit to become a speaker, then my biggest advice to you is get into classes on how to speak so that you feel comfortable with your audience. And it takes time. And a lot of people that are very young, that are in their 30s, that are presenting at conferences, they're just naturals at it. They're natural extroverts, if that makes sense. So, listen, it's not easy. It is not easy getting on this circuit due to the fact that there's a lot of good speakers out there. Let's put it that way. But, and the number one thing that I cannot stress enough is be approachable. Yeah. Drop your ego. We all make mistakes. I've done it. And there's going to be people in your audience that are going to eat you alive. They're going to think that they can do a better job than you. Okay. And listen, I've had evaluations that way, and you have to look at those evaluations and say, that person was just having a bad day, So try not to take it personally, but, or, get in front of your family, get in front of your spouse, get in front of your friends, and whatever it is that you want to eventually present to an audience, then start small and then go big. Don't go big first until you're ready.
I dig it.
Yeah.
It's good advice, though. It goes along with practicing. You got to practice. Yep. It's just like with exercise. You can't expect to be a great at squats or deadlifts or any movement, really. On the first try, you got to get your reps in, get that practice in.
Yes, sir. I agree.
That's good stuff right there. So before we sign off here, Leslie, can you tell listeners where they can find you online, social media, and any upcoming events you have?
Sure. Well, I am, anyone is welcome to email me. I am Leslee, Leslee, Bender, Bender, at bendertraining.com, or I'm sorry, Leslee at bendertraining.com. I have too many emails. I am Ageless Now is my website, and we'll be developing a lot of new programming coming up. I am speaking at Fitness Fest next weekend. I'm doing 2 sessions for IDEA, and DCAC are the conferences for this year. I may or may not be going to Korea. I haven't heard about that yet. Kind of gets down to what their restrictions are. But next year, I hope to do a lot more live conferences. CamFit Pro, I will be doing that virtually as well. The World Bar Summit, I'm speaking at that one. So, and I'm hoping, in accordance with Dan Ritchie, we are talking about doing a summit somewhere here on the West Coast. Probably November or something like that. Even if it's small, we are looking at, doing an active aging summit. So that's in the works. So, and if it doesn't happen this year, it will next, because at the end of the day, I would love to do a retreat for people. I have a lot of people that want to do it. And it's just, you know how it is. It takes time and effort to put something big together like Fitness Fest. So with that being said, I'm very excited and honored to work with Janice and yourself this year. And I look so forward to meeting all of you that are listening in person.
Awesome. So make sure you check her out at Fitness Fest coming up in September. She's got some great sessions, great education. I know that I've had the pleasure of rewatching some of them on the playback just because I wasn't able to. She has 4 sessions. You heard that. 4 sessions. Thursday, wow. 2 on Friday, and 1 on Sunday. So you can catch her in Phoenix, September, Fitness Fest Live. Leslee, thank you for coming on the Fitness Fest podcast, being our guest, sharing your story, and again, being a pioneer that's always pushing the bar forward.
Well, thank you for having me, and have an amazing, amazing day. And thank you all for listening.